Afternoon, everyone. Rachel, good afternoon, Rachel and everybody. Welcome today, and thanks for attending today's presentation covering the Alabama DOT's use of the ATCMTD, the Advanced Transportation and Congestion Management Technologies Deployment Grant, their use case on that. We're excited and thrilled to be hosting some out-of-state folks to talk about the exciting grant work they've done and the things they've been able to do with this funding and the technologies they've been able to deploy. Thank you to KCI for sponsoring the event today and to Perimeter CID for hosting it. And of course, thank you to Jonathan Mills, Jason Taylor, both with Alabama DOT, and Cory Evans with Arcadis for joining us today and sharing their story. Before we get into it, my name is Tom Glickert with Kimley Horn. I'm the president of ITS Georgia, and I'm thrilled to share some information with you about what we have planned coming up. Our members are the backbone of our organization. We're off to a great start with 2023 membership, so thank you to all of those of you who have joined up. Membership remains live for the remainder of the year up to the annual meeting, so keep a lookout for. Let's turn this call off really quick. Keep a lookout for that for updates on that. We have some exciting content planned throughout the year. Emily Dwyer with GDOT, Mary Thumaty with SEI, and Fair Glasgow with Utilicom are leading our program committee. Just a quick update from them. On April 26th, GDOT will be presenting on providing an update on DriveWise, which provides CV messages to commercial motor vehicles. Perfect, right? Nailed it. ITS Georgia is committed to growing the engineering community in Georgia. As such, we will be providing regular updates and sharing news from the STEM communities throughout the state. If you have any updates you'd like to share with us, please reach out to me at president@itsga.org. The one announcement we have today, ACEC will be hosting their annual Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day at KSU on April 15th. I know many of you already participate in this wonderful event and encourage you all to participate and get involved if you haven't before. ITS Georgia stays involved and engaged with ACEC and the legislative community of Georgia. I'm going to pass it off to Matt Glasser with Arcadis to provide an update.
Thanks, Tom. Legislative session is closing up, but we're not quite there yet. The last meeting, I had mentioned a few of the tort reform efforts that were going on. Very quickly, most of them have failed, which is unfortunate. So the ones that did fail were the premises liability piece, lawsuits against trucking companies, specifically going after their insurance companies, as well as seatbelt admissibility. Obviously, the engineering associations are not happy about this and have approached the Georgia Chamber of Commerce to see what they can do to keep poking. But fortunately, the Apex Doctrine piece is still moving forward, but that's not out of the woods yet. In budget news, the amended budget for our current fiscal year did get updated and didn't get approved. Specifically as it relates to our world was the Pels board. They had asked for $500,000. They ended up with $300,000. They feel like they can work with that, so they're not too terribly upset, but they are continuing to push for next year's full budget. Next year's budget, they'd asked for $2.5 million. As it stands right now, it's at a little under 1.1. Again, they feel like they can operate with that, but they're going to see what they can do. As it relates to overall budget negotiations, there is a little bit concern at the Capitol just about a potential economic downturn, so they're trying to play a little bit more, trying to tighten the belt a little bit. Let's see. This will impact the government agencies specifically and ultimately the contracting community. For those of you that are familiar with like quick response type project where they go out and say, you know, here's the maximum that we can allow, that's has been allowed to increase up to $250,000 presently. They're hoping to get that up even further, but that's what passed this year. And electric vehicle charging, which has been obviously the brand new thing this year. Both the House and the Senate have been working back and forth. And on those bills, they keep moving forward in a positive way, specifically allowing for the sale of kilowatt hours. Only Georgia Power can do that right now. If you're like a BP, you can't do that. You have to sell it by time. They're going to include taxing on charging, as well as identifying the Department of Agriculture to do regulation, which is who does gas stations presently. So again, that's all good news. Another piece of budgetary news, there was a push for more freight funding. That did not make it. It does contain broad support, but they just couldn't make it work in terms of time. If you are a DBE firm in the state of Georgia, they are trying to make it easier for you in terms of getting your certification, so that's good. That's got very broad support. So basically, if you get federal approval, the idea is that Georgia will give you the thumbs up and you don't have to go through a bunch of extra steps here in Georgia. That's it. Any questions before I roll off? Excellent. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you, Matt. ITS Georgia is currently hosting a March Madness bracket tournament. It's been a huge hit so far with 37 members submitting their brackets. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to win, so I've just decided to cancel the whole thing and take the prizes. So thank you for participating anyways. It's going really well. There's the few folks that are in the lead there that will likely pull away from it. We'd hoped to do a watch party for the earlier rounds, but the Georgia winter decided to stretch out for a few more weeks. So those plans fell through, but we're excited for spring and look forward to sharing some warm outdoor networking events soon. If you're planning on attending the ITS America Conference in Texas this year in April, please know that ITS Georgia is being recognized for the 2021 Outstanding State Chapter Award. The ITS Awards reception will be held on April 26th at 5 p.m. in the Networking Lounge. If you're in attendance to ITS America, love to see you there to support ITS Georgia. Nominations for the ITS Georgia Board of Directors and Officer positions are open. Please take some time to consider running for these positions yourself, or think about some colleagues of yours that you feel like would be successful on the board. If you have any questions about this, please contact Winter Horrible, our immediate past president. The 2023 ITS Georgia annual meeting is taking place in Jekyll Island this year, September 24th through the 26th. Holly Painter with KCI is chairing the conference this year. She couldn't join us today, so I have a quick update from her. Technical committee has received a large amount of presentations this year. If you happen to miss out on that, please reach out to Holly or Gotham, send your presentation their way. We're looking at some opportunities to combine or have some multiple sessions going on at once, so they'd appreciate that. If that doesn't work out, please consider reaching out to our programs committee to submit your ideas to them. The call for volunteers for ITS Georgia annual meeting is out, and there's still room for involvement. So again, if you're looking to get involved with that meeting in any way, please reach out to Holly, and she can give you some more information on that. Sponsorship and exhibitor opportunities are also open, and the room block as well. So if you're already committed to going, I'd recommend booking a room now. Before we get to the content today, I'd like to hand it off first to Andrew Long with the Perimeter CID to give us a brief update.
Hey guys, I'm Drew with the PCID. I'm a project manager for them. Just a little bit about CID. CID stands for Community Improvement District. This is actually our offices buildings right here. And essentially what we are is a HOA, but for commercial properties. So a lot of the mast arms you see here, the trails, median landscaping, some traffic projects we do here, that's all us. I don't really have an update, but I just wanted to welcome y'all here, and I hope y'all have a great monthly meeting here. So.
Hey, Andrew, I'd say that was a perfect update. And then finally, before we get started, I'll pass it off to Mike Bush with KCI, our sponsor today, to provide a brief update on what they have going on.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Bush with KCI. On behalf of KCI, we are pleased to welcome everyone to the ITS Georgia meeting today. Also in attendance with me are Daniel Pino and George Curtis over here. Chuck Bailey couldn't make it today through another work commitment. For those of y'all that know Chuck, you know he's very long-winded, so he probably would have had a very long presentation going on right now. With me, you're not going to get that. As most of y'all know, KCI is, I guess, mostly known around here for transportation and traffic engineering, survey, and SUE. Corporately, we're also very active in ITS and other technology solutions. A lot of these include, let's see, we do freeway and arterial management systems, integrated corridor management systems, advanced traffic signal systems, express managed lanes, connected vehicles and smart city solutions, information systems, customized software and data solutions, transit systems, communications infrastructure and networks, TMC systems, CEI, and integration and maintenance. Of course, we're looking to get more involved in ITS in Georgia as well. Other than that, we really appreciate ITS Georgia and the opportunity to sponsor the meeting today, and look forward to hearing about the ALDOT grants and everything else going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and of course, thanks again to KCI for sponsoring today's meeting. So on to our presentation. I'll hand it off to Mary Thumaty to introduce our guests.
Thanks, Tom. So, okay, we're just gonna go on my tippy toes here. So in a multi-agency partnership, the Alabama Department of Transportation, Alabama Transportation Institute at the University of Alabama, City of Tuscaloosa, and Tuscaloosa County Road Improvement Commission work together to pursue and receive an award of an Advanced Transportation and Congestion Management Technologies Deployment Grant from the USDOT. Members of the working group, Jonathan Mills and Cory Evans, will discuss the application, award, design, and deployment of field devices and corresponding research performed by the Alabama Transportation Institute. And to introduce our speakers, Jonathan Mills serves as the Transportation Systems Management and Operations Engineer for the Alabama Department of Transportation. Jonathan graduated from the University of Alabama in 2009 with a degree in civil engineering. He has been a licensed professional engineer since 2014. During his 12 years with ALDOT, he has served in several roles, including traffic engineer, assistant materials engineer, and drill crew supervisor. Jonathan and his wife, Lindsay, have 2 children. Cory Evans is a transportation engineer and has been with Arcadis since 2016. Cory graduated from NC State in 2008 with a degree in civil engineering and is now a licensed professional in 5 states, including Georgia. He's been conducting ITS designs across the Southeast since 2018 and is also responsible for signal and signing and pavement marking designs. Cory has a 4-month-old boy, Wyatt, and his wife, Key. And with that, I will pass it on to Jonathan and Cory.
Well, thank you all for having me. I'm Jonathan Mills with ALDOT, and I guess I'll mention we both have kids under 7 months named Wyatt, little boys. So,
We didn't coordinate that.
no, we did not. I'll wait on the presentation. So I'll just start off by saying this was really a huge collaborative effort between all these partners and with Arcadis. When this started, we just came together in one conference room and tried to figure out how we could improve things in Tuscaloosa and the surrounding areas. So I'll go over a little bit of outline of what I'm going to talk about today. Talk about what is action, how we started with this whole thing in Tuscaloosa, go over the grant proposal, talk a little bit about project execution. Cory will talk about the ITS and network design. Then I'll come back up and talk about some funding challenges we had on the project. Give you a little brief construction update and then a little brief hit on some of the UA-ATI research efforts. So what is action? Well, we're all in the ITS world, so we must have an acronym for everything. So ACTION stands for the Advanced Connected Transportation Infrastructure and Operations Network. And basically what that is just an ITS deployment project to support ALDOT operations and then UA research. And like I said, it was developed by UA, ALDOT, City of Tuscaloosa, and the Tuscaloosa County Road Improvement Commission. And when I've given this before, there's always a question, what is the Road Improvement Commission? And what that is it's a 1% sales tax in the Tuscaloosa metro area that all the proceeds go into a fund that local politicians from each of the areas within Tuscaloosa counties decide how to allocate that money onto capital projects. So it's been a good source of funding for us. But the funding for this project was actually provided by the FAST Act grant, which was an ATCMTD grant, and some money provided by ALDOT, and then also some match provided by Tuscaloosa County Road Improvement Commission. So how we started. So really, the TSMO and ITS program in Tuscaloosa really didn't get started until late 2016. Before that, with ALDOT, we really didn't have much besides the traffic engineer that was just keeping the traffic signals going, keeping the detection going and the lights going, red, yellow, green. And with that, at the same time, the University of Alabama was working on establishing the Alabama Transportation Institute, and that's an institute on the university with a group of professors that are doing research in the transportation world. So we were looking for a place to put our traffic management center, and they were looking for a partner, being ALDOT. So we had a great opportunity for a joint ALDOT University of Alabama RTMC. This is a snapshot of our first little temporary TMC that we had on UA's campus, and it's, you can't see it. We cut out the other part, but on the other side of the screen from the pictures are a bunch of student cubicles. So we were basically in the corner of a cube farm with a bunch of grad students. So very hard for our operators getting going to stay focused. But since then, we have upgraded facilities. But I always go back to that and laugh. And at the same time, there's a UA professor named Dr. Alex Hainan who came to the university in the 2014-2015 time. And he did his PhD work at Purdue University under a guy named Darcy Bullock, who was really involved in the ATSPM world. And he wanted to bring that to Tuscaloosa. So he came to ALDOT to us and pitched this, hey, I really think there's an opportunity for us to deploy this ATSPM system in the Tuscaloosa metro area. Can I have some money to do it? So he was very persuasive and very energetic, if you know Alex. And he was able to persuade us to give him $3.2 million to upgrade our controllers, some advanced detection for that ATSPM data, and then improve our communication and a lot of our signals. We didn't really do much fiber in this, but it was a lot of radios and cell phone modems and things like that. When he got done with the HUD deployment, he came back to us and showed us, here is your user interface for this. And we looked at it and said, why is a UA professor bringing us a user interface to a group of engineers that all went to Alabama that is orange and blue? This must change immediately. So we all got a good laugh out of that. But all laughs aside, this has been a great tool for us, and I think you'll have something similar to this in Georgia as well. But this was the first deployment of this in the state of Alabama, and we've since expanded it to about 300 signals. But the first deployment was about, I think it was 85. With his project as well, we were able to put DSRCs at 85 intersections in the Tuscaloosa metro area. This was our first installation just south of Tuscaloosa on State Route 69. You can't see it in this picture, but there were about 30 people out there watching this happen, and it wasn't as exciting as we thought it was going to be. With that, we also installed at all those locations a SPAT translator provided to us by Temple, and that is a AI product that they provide to us. And what that does is take the signal phase and timing data from the signal controller and then shoots that to the DSRC, and then also shoots it out to our Glance Travel Safely app. And with that app, that's a free app to download, and anybody that comes into the Tuscaloosa metro area can download that app and get signal phase and timing data broadcast to your phone, both in a visual and a audio form. So when we got done with this deployment, or as it was wrapping up, we were really excited about everything that was going on. We were just getting our regional signal
operations program going that we came over and copied from Georgia DOT, so thank y'all for that. But we realized quickly that we needed to expand our ATSBMs to really be effective. So this is what I lovingly call our more signal stuff application. So this was basically more of what Alex Hanen did, just pretty much expanded to all our signals around the region. So it was 135 signal controllers, 175 DSRCs, and 175 of those AI connected vehicle systems, 90 PTZ cameras, and then also the research funding for a group at ATI called CAPS, which is kind of an in-house IT development shop to integrate that SPAT data from the Glance Travel Safely app into Alabama's 511 system, which we call Algo Traffic. So June of 2017, we send this in and really excited about it. And a few months later, I'm not going to make you read all this, but the short is we didn't get it. We were really crushed about this. We thought we had a great application. We thought we had great support from our politicians, but just did not get it. So after we unwound a little bit, we had to sit down with Federal Highway and got some feedback on, hey, why didn't we get this? How can we improve our application? So they said your application was highly recommended, 32 strengths and 2 weaknesses, and then they also told us they received 68 applications and only awarded 10. So that made us feel a lot better that there were 58 other people that felt the same disappointment we did. So the 2 weaknesses that they pointed out to us was, one was the long-term operational and maintenance cost of the system. We just didn't think to include that in the application, and ALDOT and the city of Tuscaloosa were planning on maintaining that system and had agreements in place, but it was just not in the grant. And the other was what I thought really made us not get the grant was part of our match was the operational cost of our TMC, and they came back and said that's not an acceptable match. So anybody doing that, don't include that in your match. So we came back to the drawing board. This is a snip of a map that we included on our application. And we just sat around the conference table and stared at it and said, how can we improve our application? Should we just resubmit the same application and fix the 2 weaknesses, or should we try to do something different? So as we continued to stare at this, we noticed all our red arrows that we're planning on doing stuff to with signals is pointing towards one area. We even called out the critical corridor of I-2059, and we kind of had an aha moment in that meeting of, we have no permanent ITS out there. Currently, we had some portable ITS devices out there, but nothing permanent. And we even identified that we have a critical corridor in our region that we're not addressing. So moving forward, our second application, we decided to focus more on the freeway, on the 2059 corridor between just west of Tuscaloosa up to the Birmingham metro area. So we decided let's do a 32-mile ITS project with a little bit of signal stuff in there as well. So we did 90 PTZ cameras, wanted to do automated crash detection algorithms to help our TMC operators, and then 175 of those DSRC AI units, 135 traffic signal controllers, keep that SPAT integration into our Algo Traffic app. But we also added a couple other things, and one was cable median crash sensors. And we have 50, 60 miles of cable median on the west end of our state that we have no ITS infrastructure, and the 911 system down there is not great, so we really don't have any way of identifying when something happens down there to report that out on our 511 system. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to at least be alerted when someone hit our cable rail, and we could dispatch maintenance folks to it. So we wanted to add that to it. Truck parking systems at our 2 rest areas in the Tuscaloosa metro area, and then also a service patrol truck, which we call our ASAP, which is like your champion hero. So we submitted that in June of 2018 and had a really long waiting period. It took 10 months for them to respond, but finally success. We were awarded just over $8 million for this grant. Really excited, went out to dinner, celebrated, and then came back to the office the next day and said, well, we got the money. What do we do now? We really didn't have any experience with a grant of this kind. No one at ALDOT and no one at UA had ever got an ATCMTD grant, and there were lots of reporting requirements and lots of other things that we were just unaware of. And I put this up here. This is a spreadsheet that we included in our application, and I made it big and wanted a whole slide because I think this was our biggest mistake on the entire project. And that was, in our application, we identified where every dollar was going and where every dollar was coming from. So ultimately, when we got further into our planning, we realized that was not right. Those are estimates. Those numbers are way off. We need to transfer some money from this silo to that silo. And unfortunately, Federal Highway would not let us do that without getting their approval. So anytime we wanted to move $1,000 from here to there or get rid of one of those, we had to get written approval from Federal Highway, which was difficult. They were really easy to work with, but it was just a unnecessary process. So don't do this. So then we kind of transitioned to well, how are we going to administer this grant? We knew there were a lot of reporting requirements in it, and the University of Alabama was actually the grant lead, and the grant was awarded to them. What we started with was, let's let UA design the project and pick a consultant firm, and then we'll also let UA actually let the project do construction and manage the C&I on the project, but have them do it since it's on ALDOT right away through an ALDOT permitting process. And then with that, just let Federal Highway provide the oversight on the project. So we went and sat down with our local Federal Highway folks who have been great through all this. But they immediately said, that's a horrible idea. You should not do that. So we said, okay, and went back to the drawing board and settled on this. So as we thought about it more, this project was really very similar to a lot of our federally funded local transportation projects. So anytime a city or a county gets any kind of federal funding, they do all the design, C&I, and reporting if there's any grant reporting, and then ALDOT actually lets the project, and then ALDOT provides that oversight for Federal Highway through what we call our local transportation bureau. I'm sure that's something Georgia DOT has in place as well. So we went back and pitched that and got the thumbs up. So we wanted to move quickly onto our design process and consultant selection. In early September of 2019, we got a verbal notice to proceed from Federal Highway. So we went ahead quickly and got our RFQ together and advertised that out. And then a few days after we sent that out, we actually got our written notice to proceed. A month or so later, had our oral interviews with our design consultants and settled on our Arcadis. And I want to just give a shout out to Cory and his team. We would not have been able to do this without them. This was our first major ITS project in the state, and we really didn't know what we were doing, and I'll be the first to admit that. So we've learned a lot. So now I'll pass it over to Cory to talk a little bit about the ITS and network design.
All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan. As Jonathan said, Arcadis was awarded the project, and to be honest, this was the first big design that we had done in Alabama as well, so thank you for all of his support on this as well. So as part of the design, in the ATCMTD grant, one of those big factors is technology. So we had all this new technology that was coming in that had not been implemented in the state of Alabama before, such as the struck parking system, these cable guide rail sensors. So we went back to Jonathan and his team to try to figure out how do we implement this and what's the best way to do this. And since they didn't have any specifications, what does this path look like? So we developed specifications for these new technologies. And in addition to that, we went back and looked at what they currently had as specifications. Those specifications impact construction costs and time that it takes to do this construction. So as we develop the new specs and review these old specs, we made improvements, and Jonathan will touch on costs here in a little bit, but those improvements actually had impacts on those anticipated costs. So one of the other kind of features of the design, without getting into details of the design, he kind of talked about the devices themselves. Some of those key features was developing a fiber allocation for the project. There wasn't a set allocation across the state or even in the region that allowed for proper communication. So we wanted to get them something that was robust. It gave them a breeze for future maintenance, and it had dedicated paths to not only devices and hubs, but to center-to-center communication as well. So before we get into discussion of the fiber allocation and architecture, I want to talk about a few things that get us to that point. Know your devices. This is what I tell my design team is make sure you know what you're putting in the field, how it's going to work, what it looks like. How many devices are we putting out there? Does your infrastructure support that? Do you have a network switch that can support those number of devices? How is all that connected? Once you understand that, then we can design it better and make not only the design itself, but the actual operations and maintenance later down the road much easier. Another thing that I like to tell my design team is make design easy. It doesn't have to be hard. Think about what you're doing, and I don't know if all of us do CAD work here, but as we get CAD files, you look at them and say, I don't understand what's going on. Somebody's got all these different templates in here, this and that. Keep your design files clean. If we keep it clean and organized, it's much easier to follow. So color code things and don't have extra line work in there. So that's what I like to tell my design team. It made this project so much easier and smoother. So jumping into ITS architecture. So some things that we looked at was trying to figure out how do we connect not only the devices to the hubs, those hubs to the TMC, but regionally we wanted to connect everything and give them an opportunity to be able to expand that. So not just within the region, but outside of that region as well. So what we're looking at here is a hub-to-hub communication with devices between. This is just a small example, 6 devices. So what we're looking at is one buffer tube. So fiber trunk line has 12 buffer tubes for 144 count fiber. And of that 12 buffer tube count, we're using 1 to connect all devices throughout the corridor. Inside that buffer tube, we have 12 fibers. And we broke those fibers into 3 fiber groups. So if I'm getting too technical, let me know. But those 3 fiber groups are broken into 4 fibers each. And what we're doing is taking the first 4 fibers within that first buffer group or fiber group and sending it to the first device. It will then jump to the 4th device and repeating all the way through. The second fiber group will be the next 4 fibers. It goes to device number 2, 5, and so on until you get to your hub. And same thing with the 3rd fiber group. You're going to send it to the 3rd and 6th to your hub. Of the fiber groups, we have 4 fibers. 2 of those are going to be used for your data communications. The other 2, we went ahead and terminated in the cabinets so that in the future, when maintenance comes out, if there's an issue, it's a very simple change. Just move your jumper to one of those other fibers that's already connected. The nice part about this is we can do hubs the same way. So we connect our hubs on a different buffer tube and do a daisy chain method in the same way, where we use 4 fibers to communicate data to each hub. So again, connect the 1st and 4th, 2nd and 5th, and so forth. It's nice when we do this because if you have an event failure at one of these locations, it's not going to cause a critical failure for the entire corridor. It's just going to be at that one location. So here's some examples of kind of what the plans actually look like. And just want to point out a few things here. So remember that diagram we saw earlier with all the device and port assignments and all the devices on the network switch? We're showing that in our diagram to show these are the devices at each location, as well as how this is going to be connected to our network. So we're using each buffer tube, showing the fibers that are going to that, not specifically how they're connected, but how those fibers are going to be connected for each device location. So this is the assignment that we came up with, the architecture for the entire region. We decided the blue buffer tube was going to be all ITS devices. The orange was going to be a spare that we would connect at each hub, but not at the device locations. It would just pass through. The green was going to be our hub-to-hub communication. The brown slate, and all these others are going to be dark. The other two that we used was going to be the white. That is a center-to-center communication path, so connecting the TMCs together in the different regions, as well as red for the rest area communications. We were trying to provide drops for their algo systems that they have embedded in those rest areas. So this is another example of what that splice diagram looked like. What I want to point out here is the daisy chain method. So we had seen the diagram before with the 6 devices between the 2 hubs and 4 fibers going to it. That's what this is showing, and this is showing how that is actually connected at each cabinet location. One thing I do want to point out as well is not only is a drop from one, so this is a pull box down here with our splice enclosure. From there, we can connect one cabinet. We've daisy chained a few of these cabinets together because these are pretty close. Instead of providing additional drops along the fiber lines, we just connected the cabinets themselves. And then some of them get a little tedious. This is one pull box, one fiber enclosure with 4 different drops coming off. So I just wanted to point out how we demonstrated this, and what we're looking at here is a drop cable coming from 2 different buffer tubes. One is going to be the blue for the ITS devices. The other is the green, or the red buffer tube. That's going to be a rest area drop. Notice how the splices are shown along the fibers. We always started back at 1, if you will, if it's the first device along that path. So that's going to be the first fiber group. Notice in the blue buffer tube up top, it starts at the second because it's continuing along from the previous devices. So this is the rest area drop along the red buffer tube. Oops. And it goes up to that green box on the top left. We just capped and coiled it outside of the rest area for the rest area staff to come in and pull that fiber and connect. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jonathan.
So we, Cory and his team finished the plan, so we're ready for letting. So we send the project to letting January 29th, 2021. We have a bracket estimate on the project of 6.1 to 7.5, and then bids come back. Low bid is over $2 million above our budget. We were floored by this. Extremely disappointed. We didn't really know what we were going to do. We knew we really wanted to let the project. So I go start digging in couch cushions. I call Federal Highway, asked, is there any way we can get more money with the grant award? They said no very quickly. Went to our chief engineer at AlDOT, asked, can we have a little bit more money? I'll go try to find a match somewhere else too. Went to Tuscaloosa County Road Improvement Commission, presented it, showed it, asked for more funding. They said no, and the rest of the local municipalities were unwilling to throw any more in either. So we didn't let it. We decided to punt. Did not award the project. I figured we're in Georgia, so I should show a Georgia punter. But I also had a hard time finding a picture of Bama punting. We don't punt much, you know. So. Just kidding. Just kidding. So we got some. Sorry. So we got some feedback from our contractors on what caused the inflated bids, and really overwhelmingly was COVID. Bids this letting averaged about 20% higher than what we estimated across the board, not just ITS projects, but resurfacing and everything. So that was a shock, and also right about this time was in the middle of the computer chip shortage crisis we had. So everything in our project had chips in it. So the material procurement times with that were going to be very high. Fiber material procurement times at this point were over a year. And so that was a major concern of the contractor, that we probably didn't give them enough time on the project either. So I feel like that was a major contributing factor. Another thing was the geologics of the earth up on the north end of the project. There was a lot of rock, very rocky, and the rock bores and rock cutting as part of putting the conduit in there was going to be very expensive. Also, the truck parking system was about twice what we expected it to be. And there were major concerns of the contractors of those cable median crash sensors. It was a brand new product that none of the contractors had ever used. really with an unknown vendor too. And they were really concerned about that because the way our projects work in Alabama, and it's probably the same here, but until we fully finish the project and accept the project and everything is done, the contractor is responsible for the maintenance and keeping those devices up. So they were really concerned that they were not going to be able to do that, especially with the cable median crash sensors. So we went back to the drawing board and knew we had to cut some things out of the project. And the first thing we started with was we cut it almost in half. Removed everything on the north end of the project, north of the Mercedes-Benz manufacturing plant there in Vance. That was from about milepost 90 to almost 105 in the Jefferson County area, and about 15 miles. So that was the first thing we cut. We came back, we redid the estimate off what the bid prices were off the high bid, and we were still over. So next we cut the truck parking system. Currently we've kind of added that back in a little bit with some machine learning stuff and cameras that we're deploying as not part of a project. Then we cut a little section of fiber. It's about 5 miles of fiber just on the west end of Tuscaloosa Metro. We left the actual ITS device locations there and just using cell communication and radio communication with those. Still didn't have enough. So we cut the cable median crash sensors. That was one of the major things the contractors came back in and were concerned about. So we cut that out. And then another cost savings that helped us was between the times that we sent the application in and received the feedback and all that, we actually let another project that redid all the traffic signals and upgraded all the traffic signals on about 13 or 14 of our identified signal locations. So Cory reworked the plans, we reworked the bid to match this and sent it back out in June of 2018. So our try two was September 4th, 2021, and bracket estimate of 5.5 to 6.7, and lo and behold, our low bid came in below our bracket estimate. So we really probably cut a little bit too much out, but we really didn't want to have to go through this process again. So we were extremely excited, of course, and wanted to move quickly into construction. Key dates with construction: we issued notice to proceed 11/29/21, and work began in February of the following year. One of the major hurdles we had, I've said this a few times, but it was really our first major ITS-only deployment project in Alabama. So really, none of our project management team or project inspectors at AlDOT really had any idea how to manage or inspect this project. So we suggested that the university find a qualified consultant to do the C&I, and they ended up settling on Neil Schaefer, and they've done a great job and been a great partner. A little bit of progress update on the project. Currently, all the conduit and comm boxes have been installed, and all the ITS poles have been installed. They're currently pulling fiber and putting in ITS cabinets, and I actually saw on my way home yesterday afternoon that they had their splicing trailers out there doing some of the trunk splicing. Some of the challenges we've had on the project, we gave a pretty long procurement time on the project, but there were still some items that caused some problems for us. And also, really, our design section in Montgomery that does the material approval from the contractors were really not prepared and equipped to manage this level and this number of material submittals sent in, and they got fairly behind on that. So there was a delay caused by that as well. So we ended up having to extend the project time. The original completion date was March 9th of 2023, which has just passed, and we had to give them a few more months. So our new completion date is July 15th of 23, and we feel pretty confident we're on schedule to hit that now. I want to speak a little bit about the UA research and development as a part of this project. This is a deployment project, but since it was awarded to UA, there's also a heavy research and development side of this as well. One of the two major things we're working on with this is a few of their professors and grad students are working on a digital twin for our network around the Tuscaloosa metro area, and they're doing this in Sumo. And basically what this is a simulation tool developed to create a virtual representation of high-resolution traffic data that is in our network. And it's real-time traffic signal data, real-time detector data, And it's just a digital twin of exactly what the vehicles are doing on our network. And one of the benefits of that and one of the uses of that is it enables traffic signal timing, deployment, and testing. So we will be able to, before we implement corridor-wide signal improvements and signal timings, we can test it on the digital twin, see how it reacts, and then make adjustments on the digital twin and try to eliminate some of those hardships that come with a new signal timing deployment. Another thing is the disruptions to our network caused from lane closures. So when there's planned construction activities or planned maintenance activities along any of our major corridors, we can go in our digital twin and implement these lane closures and see how that affects traffic and try to guide our maintenance and construction folks on when they need to do these closures and when they need to stay away from them. Here's just a little short video and zoom in of that SUMO program and how they're developing that, and this has been really cool to see. And then finally, to help out our traffic management center operators, and Cory may have spoke on this, but on all our ITS pole locations, we have one PTZ camera and we have 2 fixed cameras. And we're going to use those fixed cameras, one pointing in each direction, for a machine learning crash detection system that the university is preparing us for. And we're trying to get our TMC operators away from trying to identify crashes and events by staring at cameras. We want them to use the other resources that they have and not just stare at cameras. So what we're trying to get done, and we're pretty close, we have a couple locations that we're testing now, is just have a machine learning algorithm that whenever it sees something that's different on our roadways, it sends an alert to our TMC operators, and then they can go confirm in that to see if that is an actual issue. But I've threatened to turn our video wall off a few times because our operators like to stare at it so much. So I feel like this will be a great solution for us with that. But that's all we have. Questions? And thank you all so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Which vendor was selected? What did you say? Which vendor was selected?
Vendor for what?
Benjamin?
So it's in line out of Bessemer, I believe. So.
I have a question. So you had mentioned with the grant, you had the buckets of money and the estimates.
Yes.
and shifting that and having that flexibility. Do you feel like had you not given that detail that you might not have gotten the grant? Like what kind of level were they really looking for?
So the feedback
I guess what's that balance, right?
Yeah,
Between,
there's a fine balance.
it's like, this is the amount we need, we're not gonna tell you how we're using it versus.
I think we would have been better.
Sorry, that's a long way back. But I want to show. Yeah, so I feel like it would have been much better if we did not identify where the funding was coming from for each of the things. And then also I feel like it would have been better if we would have just done it in a couple buckets, you know, freeway operations and signal operations, and just provide that split. Yes, but not provide the level of details and where each individual dollar is coming from and where it's being used.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is the primary focus in the state of Alabama to have a lot of the development come out of 2A? For example, you know, you're having operators stare at a computer screen when there's already a multitude of automated incident detection. So is the focus in Alabama to have them design and develop and you utilize their product? Or why not just put an automated incident detection system in place right now in your current existing infrastructure, and then no one would have to watch the screen?
So why we decided to do it that way was the partnership coming up, and UA were the ones that wanted to go after the grant to do this research to do it. So we partnered with them to do it, and the thought process behind that is we want to create our own system and have control over how that system goes, and it's cheaper. Absolutely. Yeah, so now we have actually programmed another project to finish this project now, and we're working on trying to find funding for that. We have the PE project and the construction projects set up in the system, but still waiting on the funding for that. So Cory's just sitting on G, waiting on O for us to tell him to go, so. We had to get rid of one,
We
right?
got rid of one hub and some other devices. But No, not really. Because we had set it up, we could literally just cut it at the last hub and connect a few devices back to that hub, and it didn't change any of that infrastructure for us. So we drop 8 fibers everywhere, correct, and terminate them in the cabinet, and so bypass the other 4. That way you don't lose that. If that device goes down, those other 4 fibers continue data to the next device. So if something happens,
Well, you said the sumo? So the data for it actually comes from the traffic signal controllers. Yes, yes. So, currently we have mostly census pucks. There have been some maintenance challenges with those. So I hear laughs, like everyone is familiar with the maintenance challenges of that. So we're currently looking at replacing most all of those with Waitron's radar. So that's what we're doing moving forward.
I want to get back to your question about the 4 that pass through. So the drop, we have 4 fibers that are dropping from the trunk line. We splice 8 from the drop cable into that, and the other 4 are capped coil, not used. So
Cap coil glass all the way through. That was my question. Would you consider cap coil dropping to 4 in case something happens?
so they're cap coiled. So we were talking drop cable from the trunk line to the device itself. Those 4 we're not using. We don't want to splice those into the trunk line because then that would take away our redundancy to the other devices.
Those aren't displaying flashes.
They are. Not in the trunk line, no, in the drop cable, yes.
Drop they are, but in the trunk line they're not.
But they're not.
So that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Are they using that extra buffer in the trunk as in glass or
Cable sense, you weren't able to do it in this project, but are you or UA using it on any other projects, and do they work?
No, we're not. We're hoping to buy a couple miles of them to test them out, but don't have the funding for it at this time. All right. Thank you so much.